It was a nation born from revolution, fueled by ideology, built on fear, and destined for collapse. From the icy plains of Siberia to the grand halls of the Kremlin, the Soviet Union was one of the most powerful and most feared empires in human history. For nearly 70 years it challenged the West, shaped the world, and left behind a legacy both terrible and profound. This is the story of how the Soviet Union rose from the ashes of a fallen empire, and why it all came crashing down. At the turn of the 20th century, Russia was a crumbling autocracy. The Romanov dynasty ruled a vast, backward empire where millions lived in poverty under Tsar Nicholas II. In 1917, the Russian Revolution exploded. First came the February Revolution, then the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in the October Revolution. Lenin promised peace, land, and bread. But civil war followed. From 1917 to 1922, Bolsheviks fought a brutal war against the anti-communist White Army. The Bolsheviks won, and in 1922, they founded a new nation, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. A Marxist state, one-party rule, no private property, and no room for dissent. Lenin dreamed of a workers' paradise, but his health faded quickly. After his death in 1924, a brutal power struggle began. The man who emerged, Joseph Stalin, ruthless, paranoid, unstoppable. Stalin launched rapid industrialization through 5-year plans. He collectivized farms, causing a massive famine, especially in Ukraine, where millions died in the Holodomor. He ruled with fear, political purges, gulags in Siberia, secret police watching everyone. By the late 1930s, Stalin had total control, and millions were dead. In 1939, Stalin shocked the world, signing a non-aggression pact with Hitler. But in 1941, Hitler betrayed him. Operation Barbarossa was the largest invasion in history. The Soviet Union was nearly destroyed, but it survived. From the ruins of Stalingrad and the siege of Leningrad, the Red Army pushed the Nazis back. In 1945, the Soviets captured Berlin. They were no longer a struggling nation. They were a global superpower. Stalin then expanded Soviet influence across Eastern Europe, installing communist regimes in Poland, East Germany, Hungary, and more. The Iron Curtain had descended. The world was now split in two: capitalist West, communist East, and the Soviet Union was leading the charge. The Cold War was not fought with bullets, but with espionage, proxy wars, propaganda, and the looming threat of nuclear annihilation. From Korea to Vietnam, Angola to Afghanistan, the Soviets funded revolutions and propped up communist regimes. They raced to space, launching Sputnik, the first satellite, in 1957, and they sent the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into orbit in 1961. But behind the facade of power, cracks were forming. What was a life like in the USSR? For many, it meant free healthcare and education, jobs guaranteed by the state, a sense of stability, but also empty store shelves, constant surveillance, no freedom of speech or religion, and a deep sense of fear. Censorship was everywhere. Art, music, even jokes could land you in prison. Still, the Soviets believed they were building a utopia, and then came Chernobyl. In 1986, a nuclear reactor exploded in Ukraine. The government tried to hide it until radioactive clouds drifted across Europe. Chernobyl shattered global trust in the Soviet system. By the 1980s, the USSR was stagnating. Then came Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union. He introduced perestroika, economic restructuring, glasnost, openness. He hoped to save the Soviet Union, but instead, he unleashed forces he couldn't control. People demanded more than reform. They wanted independence. the Eastern Bloc began to collapse. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. In 1991, a failed coup tried to restore hardline communist rule. It backfired. By December, the Soviet flag was lowered for the last time. In the end, the Soviet Union broke apart into 15 independent nations: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic states, and others. It left behind a legacy of brutal repression, but also scientific achievement, a powerful nostalgia for some, and deep scars for others. The Cold War ended, but the shadow of the Soviet Union still looms over the world. In Ukraine, in modern Russia, in every nuclear treaty, and every space station, the echoes remain. The Soviet Union was born from revolution and died by the weight of its own contradictions. It sought to build a classless utopia and instead created a prison of fear. But its story of power, ideology, and collapse, and for the sake of all that endured this hardship, is one reason why we can't afford to forget it. Before we end, here are 5 chilling facts about the Soviet Union that you probably didn't learn in school. 1. The KGB knew everything. The Soviet secret police, the KGB, was one of the most powerful and feared organizations in the world. They had informants in nearly every school, workplace, and apartment block. You could be arrested for telling the wrong joke. Even children sometimes reported their parents. 2.20 million dead under Stalin. Joseph Stalin's rule is estimated to have caused up to 20 million deaths between forced famines, gulags, mass executions, and purges. It was one of the bloodiest reigns in human history. 3. There were towns that didn't exist on maps. Some cities, especially those involved in nuclear weapons or biological research, literally didn't appear on maps. These closed cities were walled off, heavily guarded, and unknown to most citizens. People were born, lived, and died in places that officially didn't exist. 4. Nuclear near misses. The world came terrifyingly close to nuclear war, more than once, because of Soviet actions. In 1983, a Soviet satellite falsely detected incoming US missiles. Only one officer, Stanislav Petrov, refused to launch a counterattack. His decision may have saved the world. 5. The dead spoke in trials. During Stalin's purges, people were sometimes executed first, then put on trial later. Their confessions were faked, trials staged, long after they were dead. Even in death, the state controlled your narrative. The Soviet Union may be gone, but the ghosts it left behind still haunt the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe for more history content.